We're going to begin started in just a moment. We've got a lot of folks joining right now, so I want to give them a moment to join us. And then once they have, we'll go ahead and get started. All right. I think that's our first round of folks. I'm sure we'll have some more trickling in as we get going, but no reason to delay any longer. So good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us. We're excited to have you here for our webinar, AI and Health and Human Services Going Beyond the Buzz. My name is Lauren Langer, and I'll be your host for today's webinar. Before we dive in, I'm honored to introduce our presenter, Ann Balduzzi. Ann is a recognized AI expert and one of DC region's top women in tech. With an extensive experience in optimizing operational efficiency and mitigating risk with AI, she's held key roles with industry giants such as AOL and Apple. Ann is also the founder of the award-winning and AI enablement platform, SameGrain, and she holds a patent in data match analysis. Today, Ann will take us beyond the buzz and into the practical real-world applications that can benefit your organization. A few housekeeping items before we get started. Please keep your microphones on mute throughout the presentation to avoid any background noise. And if you have any questions during the presentation for Ann, please use our Zoom chat to submit them directly to me, and I'll be collecting those questions. And at the end of the presentation, we're going to have a Q&A where I will go ahead and I'll read those off to Ann, and she'll answer them to the best of her ability. Without further ado, please take it over, Ann Balduzzi.
Great. Thank you for having me here today. I really appreciate this opportunity to share some of my background and experiences in the space of AI. And also, I always start every presentation off, which, by the way, I've been giving presentations on the future of AI for about 20 years now. And the future is among us. We're living that future right now. And so, but it's a very quickly paced and quickly changing future. So I kind of always start out with this warning or disclaimer to say, a lot of the information you're going to hear about today may just within a few weeks or months be very out of date. So that just gives you a sense of the pace in which things are evolving in this space. I also like to start off with just making sure everybody understands that artificial intelligence is an extremely rare, pivotal moment in human history. It's not only going to be transforming businesses, but it's frankly going to be transforming humanity as a whole, much in the way that the invention of electricity transformed humanity, or the Industrial Revolution, or even the introduction of the internet. In fact, I think it's going to be bigger than all three of those events combined. And it's going to be unlocking unprecedented potential for both innovation, productivity, progress. And also, it's important to recognize that the pace of growth within these AI, evolutionary moments is incredibly fast. In fact, it's exponentially fast. So I like to start out by helping people kind of really grasp what we mean when we say exponential growth. And so to do that properly, I want you to just imagine, from wherever you're sitting in whatever room you happen to be in, imagine 30 linear steps from your chair. And so if you look around you, you might, imagine you being on the other side of a room, maybe into a hallway, maybe into the next room, but you can pretty accurately judge what 30 linear steps looks like. Now I want you to pause and start to imagine what 30 exponential steps might look like. That might take you maybe to the other side of the building, the other side of town, the other side of your state. Some of you may be thinking the other side of the country, but actually 30 exponential steps would take you almost to the moon. So that's the kind of growth we're looking at. When we talk about exponential growth in the area of AI, this is sort of the magnitude of that number, and that shape of the growth curve that we're actually looking at. So you're going to hear me talk about exponential growth a few times this afternoon. So I just want to make sure that you understand what that truly means when we're talking about it. But By the way, AI has not been an overnight success. It's actually been growing over the past 70 years. And we are in a period of AI right now. That whole 70-year period has really fallen into a stage of AI that's roughly known as artificial narrow intelligence. And this is where the AI is simply augmenting human intelligence. This is frankly is the happy-go-lucky days of AI. This is the kind of gold rush era of AI. This is also the point in time which AI is providing those nice narrow use cases in which we can build on our productivity and also reduce costs. Now, if you haven't heard of the name Ray Kurzweil, he's a very famous name in the area of AI. He's actually been predicting a lot of major timeframes within AI and has been very accurate with his past predictions. And he's actually predicting we're going to hit the next stage of AI, which is referred to as artificial general intelligence, or AGI. He's anticipating we'll be there sometime the end of this decade. And that's when the AI is actually equal to human intelligence. So imagine then having sort of a PhD level of intelligence that is sitting right next to you or working with you in your work environment. And that's the kind of environment that we're looking at when it comes to that phase of AGI. And by the way, you're going to hear the buzz phrase AGI more and more as we get closer and closer to that point in time. And people have various definitions of what it truly means to be at that AGI stage. So there'll be some debate about that as well. And then the final stage of AI, which we are nowhere close to and may never actually even happen, but that's often referred to as artificial superior intelligence. Some people call it the singularity, but it's basically when the AI is superior to humans and it knows it. And this is where a lot of your sci-fi movies have all been built around this area of this side of AI. But it's not necessarily going to be dystopian. In fact, more and more researchers are imagining a very utopian state that we could be in if we ever get to that point in time. So it doesn't necessarily have to be the way Hollywood has projected it. And the only reason I mention it this morning is because a lot of your employees or your staff, when they hear just the word artificial intelligence, they're immediately thinking about the Terminator. And so those scarier thoughts are going to automatically come to mind. And I can tell you right now that we're a pretty long way away from that actually happening. And there's actually far other scarier things to think about that could be happening right now, just in the area of artificial narrow intelligence. And we'll cover those a little bit later. So looking at that timeline, if we go back to the beginning of AI, and that was roughly 1950, those earlier years were extremely hindered by, we didn't have the computational power, we didn't have enough data, the algorithms were really inefficient, and frankly, the venture capital community really wasn't funding AI initiatives. They just didn't see the promise of it. It was too far off and too futuristic at the time. So not a lot of money was being poured in that direction. But if you want to get, for grins and giggles, if you want to kind of look at an interesting video that's up on YouTube, it took place in roughly 1988 at Apple, and that was Apple creating its version of the future of AI, and it was called Apple Knowledge Navigator. It's a grainy old video if you look at it, but ironically, it's very accurate as to where we are or very soon will be with AI in the near future. So the predictions that were being made way back then are actually starting to evolve and come true now. And then we moved into the era roughly between 1999 and 2017. And this was the era of kind of classifying and tagging data. And it was sort of moving us closer and closer to deep learning. And this is where a lot of the AI researchers, in order to sort of judge the accuracy or the accomplishments that they were making with AI, they had the AI actually play humans in, sophisticated games like chess. IBM's Watson beat all the humans in the game of Jeopardy. And then more recently in 2017, DeepMind, which is now owned by Google, created a solution called AlphaGo. And AlphaGo was designed and actually achieved the ability to beat the #1 Go players on the planet. And for those of you who are not familiar with the game of Go, it is the longest continuously played game in human history. It's been played for 2,500 years. It's highly complex in that there are more moves or options and how to play the game than there are atoms in the observable universe. So it's highly complicated. And this AlphaGo, after beating, the top Go player at the time, it showed us that there were new moves in the game that no human in 2,500 years had ever thought to try. And so it was really not just thinking outside of the box in the human perspective of thinking outside the box. It was thinking way outside of the box in ways that humans don't normally think. And this was really interesting to the head of DeepMind at the time, Demis Hassabis. He actually called it like almost an alien playing against humans because it was in such a sophisticated way that nobody had even thought to play the game in that capacity. And then DeepMind went a step further and they stripped out all the programming knowledge and instead just gave AlphaGo the rules to the game and told it to play itself. And this is what they called AlphaGo Zero because they had it start from scratch all over. And within a few weeks of training itself, the program was actually back up to able and capable of beating the top Go players, human Go players at least. So that was sort of an interesting evolution in the phase of AI. And that brought us to the era of AI that we're in right now. And this is the generative AI era and large language models. But it actually started with a new transformer architecture. And so all of these AI researchers that were working on all these kind of disparate different directions in how AI could possibly work. After this new transformer architecture was developed, they all began to emerge and kind of regroup around generative AI and large language models because they simply were working better and producing better results. And during this time frame, something interesting to the healthcare community, DeepMind also went off and solved the protein folding problem. And this was a long-standing problem that nobody had solved. But sure enough, an AI solved it. And that has opened up and unlocked an entirely new area of biology. In fact, it's now creating and working on new vaccines, new medicines, new materials. It's a really breathtaking sort of evolution in the area of science. And you'll start to hear more and more about that as well. But as of today, we are in this era right now of the explosion of large language models. And all these large language models, by the way, they work off of text prompts. So text, you can go text to write a report or a press release or a poem or any kind of, text to text kind of scenario. But you can also use a text prompt to generate programming code, images, video, music, audio, translations in multiple languages, robot instructions, and the list goes on and on. But this now has evolved even further. And so that you not only have to type in text as part of your prompt, but your prompt can actually just be you conversing with a chatbot. So it can be, instead of a graphic user interface, you might have a language user interface moving forward. And then it's all of these tools will just be working off our own voice prompts. And just to give you a sense of how the image evolution of AI came to be, this is a group of images of Chihuahua dogs and blueberry muffins. And you and I as humans can easily distinguish between which one's a dog and which one's a muffin. However, an AI had to be trained on how to do this. So much in the same way that an AI was trained to be able to review X-rays in a hospital environment, it has also been trained to view differences like this. And so what's happening is you had to send thousands of images of Chihuahua dogs that were tagged and identified to the AI, and thousands of images of blueberry muffins that were set up in the same way. And that over time trained the AI to be able to distinguish between these two objects or two, entities. And this has been going on, by the way, for decades and is part of the ability and has created this new kind of ability within AI that now I can type in a simple prompt and say, hey, I'd like to see a picture of a Chihuahua dog blueberry muffin. And one of the many image generators that are out there today can easily put that together for me. I can even take it a step further and have that dog talk. and have it moving its lips. I can even take it another step further and create a video out of this, and have that dog or image moving around like a real-time video. So this is the direction in which a lot of these new AI kind of tools, more for marketing and things like that, have moved in this direction. But it's also showing the promise of where AI can take us in lots of other areas as well. So overnight, while AI didn't happen overnight, it's, took 70 years to get where we are today. Prompt engineering has pretty much been a very recent phenomenon, and how you craft a prompt is very important as it relates to the results that you get in working with these large language models. Now, I'm listing here sort of the top 4 large language models. There are many others, and there's other top ones as well. In fact, there's probably over 100 large language models today. But these are some of the more popular ones that everybody's familiar with. So I thought I'd just kind of give a quick rundown on how they're differentiated. GPT 4o is the latest version of ChatGPT. That was developed by OpenAI. This is actually free to use. You get a few extra features if you have the paid version, but it's multimodal. And the cool thing about it being multimodal is you can actually converse with it. So this has a lot of really interesting applications in the mental health space, for example. You can actually have conversations with this, chatbot, so to speak. And very soon they'll be unlocking image assistance as well. So you'll be able to open the camera up on your phone, and using it, you'll be able to point to something, maybe a device, maybe a piece of equipment, and it can give you instructions on maybe how to use that equipment. So lots of interesting use cases are evolving out of these newer multimodal tools with regards to ChatGPT. Another solution out there is Claude 3.5 Sonnet. This was created by Anthropic. This actually sometimes outperforms ChatGPT, so more and more people are moving onto this platform. It too is free. It has sort of a collaborative work environment, which is a little different than how ChatGPT works. It's particularly good at coding. It can transcribe text from imperfect images. And it really has a lot of unique capabilities within itself. Unfortunately, Claude 3.5 is not connected to the internet. So if you ask it a question about something in the news that might have happened yesterday or something more recent, it won't be able to capture that. It gets updated and only can go up to information maybe that's up to date for the past few months. And then the next one, speaking of search engines, we have Google Gemini 1.5. And Gemini 1.5 is Google's version of a large language model. And what makes it unique, it, by the way, is also moving in that multimodal direction. But what really makes it stand out is it has a 1 million token context window. And what I mean by 1 million tokens, first of all, the context window is simply the window in which you type in your text prompt. But if you can put in a 1 million token context window, that means you could, as part of your prompt, you could upload an hour-long video, up to 11 hours of audio, or 700,000 words. And if you're trying to kind of understand what 700,000 words looks like, that's about 3/4 of the entire Harry Potter series. So that's a really large text prompt that you can put, whether it's audio, video, or whatever, you can make that part of your query, and then it will actually work off of that information that you've included in your text prompt. Now, what's interesting about that is it's opening and unlocking a variety of new use cases. And the other opportunity that's out there as well is Meta's Llama 3.1. This model is one of the few open source large language models. And for those of you who are not familiar with Meta, they are the parent of Facebook and Instagram. But their architecture, by opening it up, it makes it customizable so that any business can actually work with a Llama 3.1 and customize it for their own use case. And this, again, is unlocking new and unique opportunities in how you can use these large language models. Now, I want to also make sure that people understand how these models have been growing over the past several years. And just, I'm highlighting ChatGPT just because most people are more familiar with this one, but it started out sort of at that preschooler knowledge level, and then it evolved to adolescents and high school student or college or grad student. Right now, we're dealing with sort of a college student enhanced capabilities sort of level. But the next stage of AI is what is going to be referred to as GPT-5. And it's estimated that when this eventually does launch, you'll be dealing with an extreme pro version of a large language model. In other words, it will be like having that PhD right at your side to be able to work with and answer questions. And then all of these AI solutions are also now showing up on your devices. So we have Microsoft has Copilot, Apple Intelligence should be rolling out later this year or next year. And then vendors that you work with are also be incorporating a lot of these AI kind of use cases within their solutions. So you'll start to see them popping up in lots of different areas. And all of this combined together is going to be, if you add it all up, it's going to help you with proposals, letters, reports, any kind of market research that you might want to conduct, a data analysis. It's going to allow you to review your contracts that you might be dealing with or budgets. It can even handle objections during a negotiation. A lot of vendors that have meeting platforms are already, have built in the tools to do meeting recaps or even provide next steps. And then brainstorming is particularly interesting in this space because we talked about AlphaGo and AlphaGo Zero and how it really thinks outside the box. That's how another use case for AI. If you're really trying to brainstorm maybe with a team of people, but you want to have sort of some other ideas that might come from beyond the way humans think, that's an interesting application and way you can use these tools. And then marketing, PR, and social media is another great use case. I'll talk more about that in a few minutes. But essentially any repetitive task, and we're actually moving beyond even repetitive tasks as far as how these large language models can be utilized. So next, I want to kind of cover some general business AI use cases, and then I'm going to dive into some that are more specific to your industry. Engagement of any kind. So this is basically if you're engaging with either customers or patients or whatever the scenario might be, you can actually have a highly trained agent or chatbot. And this agent or chatbot, by the way, would be trained off of your own data. So whether that's your website data, any kind of content that you might have, any training data, you can include all of that into the system. And then it can actually be either front-facing, connecting directly with the customer or the patient, or it can just be connecting with your team and allowing them to provide consistent feedback or answers to questions in a faster method. And this is going to free their time up, by the way, to handle more complex issues or to simply provide more patient services. And by the way, what's really great about these chatbots is they can essentially speak in any language or dialect on the planet. So if you need it for translation purposes, it works very smoothly. And this is a really strong use case for AI, one that you'll start seeing more and more companies start to incorporate. On the human resources side of things, if you happen to have a lot of turnover or a burnout in any of your businesses, this is where these training tools really come into play because you can quickly and easily train people to specific job roles. And again, that chatbot can also be like a virtual assistant to your employees so they can get information about paid time off or safety rules or new regulations that might have come up. And so this is going to allow everyone within your organization to get consistent and timely information at all times throughout the day. And then performance management, that's another area. So imagine analyzing your employee performance, identifying any trends with that specific employee or even with a group of employees. And it can also give you some actionable insights to share with managers or set more accurate performance goals or even identify areas for improvement. So this is actually a great tool in this space of HR. And then marketing and PR, I told you I'd speak a little more deeply about that. This really goes into the personalization. So if you have any marketing efforts that you might be pursuing, you can really personalize those marketing efforts to specific audiences and specific demographics. If you have content on your website, you no longer have to go out and hire that SEO expert. You can actually have your search engine optimization done by a large language model. And then on images and videos, in the past, most marketing departments have had to pay for these images or pay for videos, but now they can create their own images and their own videos from scratch. And these can be utilized in websites, newsletters, press releases, social media posts, however you need them to be used. And most of these tools are free. Now, if we look more specifically at health and human services, on the health side, we've got amazing tools for predictive analytics for public health. So this is like analyzing large data sets that can help predict the spread of diseases. And this might be drawing information from social media, from other people that are reporting outbreaks, from other health officials, and allows you to more proactively respond on that front. But it can also, these predictive analytics can also be used to identify the new services that might be needed or potentially soon to be needed in geographic areas based on the changing demographics of that area. And then there's resource allocation optimization. This is like, helping you best, allocate hospital beds, staffing, vaccines, all of that kind of stuff, making sure that you're really being as efficient as possible and reducing waste when you're improving your service delivery. And then on personalized treatment plans, this is kind of the area that the entire medical industry is moving in, simply being able to provide that more, personalized scenario for that patient based on their medical and health history. And then on the human services side, we have, the ability to use intake forms in a more interactive way. In fact, you can use it and attach it to a chatbot so that it can answer those difficult questions or help people if they get stuck. It also can simplify the program offerings and put that into, any language or direction that they can understand. Also reducing administrative burdens. I hear about a lot of burnout rather. So automatically pulling key information from case notes and making it so that you don't have to, always be typing in the same information over and over and over again. Also drafting reports that you could easily review and submit. Service delivery as well, bridging gaps with, interactions. And oftentimes these are hindered by language barriers or intellectual disabilities or hearing and visual impairments. AI can help in all of those different areas. But with all the good and all the positive, and by the way, there's many more use cases. We just don't have time today to go through all the medical and healthcare use cases or human services use cases as well. There are, unfortunately, AI downfalls and dangers. And the first and foremost one that we always mention is hallucinations. If you haven't heard the word hallucination yet, it is simply the term that AI people use when they're really trying to say that the AI just made stuff up. And this is happening less and less, because having worked with these large language models for several years, I will say that this has definitely been improving, and I anticipate that it'll continue to improve. But for right now, we're still dealing with the occasional bad prompt or just, the bad result that you might get from a large language model. And one kind of scenario that I can explain that kind of helps to identify how these hallucinations can happen more frequently is if you ask the AI in your text prompt, let's say if you wanted to ask it about the top 5 healthcare facilities in Western Virginia. And if the AI can't think of 5 or 10 or whatever number you told it to come up with, it will make up the difference. In other words, it will give you that number that you requested because that's what you requested. But if it can only find information on, 3 or 4, it's going to make up that, the rest of the numbered items. And that's where you really have to put on your critical thinking hat to make sure that you're understanding what's real and what's not real. And one of the ways you can improve and mitigate hallucinations is to simply craft a better prompt and ask the large language model to cite references in the response, because then you can click on those references. And by all means, do click on the references, because sometimes they don't actually work, or they take you someplace that's not a real piece of information. So you've got to double check it. Make sure that the information you're getting out of these large languages is in fact factual, or that they're telling the truth. Another thing that is a problem with some of these large language models is that oftentimes they were trained on biased data. And so as a result, you might get a biased response. Now, this again is getting extremely better. I've seen this dialed back dramatically over the last year or two. But if you write a well-written prompt, or if you're working with a good data set of your own, you can really help to mitigate a biased response. And another way to help mitigate that bias is to also have diverse teams of people working on AI so they can spot that bias when it does arise and come up. And then there's black box thinking. Black box thinking oftentimes is too complex for humans. And that's really what the black box is referring to. It's not a physical black box. It's just basically stating that the way in which the AI evolved to create the answer that it generated for you, we as humans are unable to really decipher how it came up with that answer. Now, there are researchers that are looking to use AI to better understand how those answers were generated. But for right now, we're still working and dealing in this black box environment. So again, it's like an onion. No matter how far you peel it, we still can't understand the way in which those answers were generated. So we can't figure out how that hallucination might have come up, or how that bias might have jumped into the equation. And so that's why we have to maintain our critical thinking skills throughout this entire growth of AI, because there's going to be times where we really need to question the results that we're getting. And then the more scarier side of AI is fakes. And this is actually becoming easier and easier to create. Some of you may have already seen some fakes, that have been generated and have been placed online. I went ahead and created a fake of myself, which, by the way, only took about a minute or two to create. But I'll go ahead and play it for you.
I'm so excited to be an Olympic gold medalist. I really want to thank all of my supporters.
Okay, so I am not an Olympic gold medalist. I have never been in the Olympics, but for free, and within a few minutes, I was able to create that image based off an image of a real Olympic athlete. So this is the way in which these AI models are moving, at least on the scammer side of things. And it's really, frankly, that you can probably look at the video I just showed you and go, yeah, that looked kind of janky. That looked kind of fake. I could tell that was fake. But if I had used one of the paid solutions and it actually spent maybe 30, 40 minutes building it, I could have created it to look as real as I currently look on this video right now talking to you. So that's how good these tools are getting. And this can be done with a simple photo of a person, a brief video of somebody, or even 3 seconds of somebody's voice. That's all it takes for me to copy somebody's voice. And so that's creating an opportunity for scams at a bigger level than you may have ever heard or seen before. And it's not just going to be, famous people or politicians that are going to be scammed. It's going to be, actually your boss, your business, your family members. That's the direction that this is taking. And once a fake is seen, if it's out there on the internet, it's kind of actually hard for people to watch a video, even though it's fake, and still not have a portion of that video stay in their minds and have them question whether it was real or fake. So that's an issue in and of itself. But when we look at sort of the bad actors in the area of AI, and this is the scarier stuff that I was talking about earlier that's happening right now, and that is that all these bad actors are, basically using, fraud GPT on the dark web. They're learning, just as we, people are learning how to get better use cases, they're learning about use cases that are going to help scam you in deeper and darker ways. And Oftentimes they are targeting the weakest link in your organization, and that simply is your average everyday employee. So it's really critical that you train your staff, train them that that phone call that sounded just like their boss telling them to change some wiring instructions was not their boss. And so you might have to actually train them to pick up the phone and call their boss after they've heard from their boss to make sure that that change in a financial transaction was really factually true. We're also seeing vendors get hacked. And when a vendor's been hacked, they might easily be able to and in fact, sometimes they're sleeping, that these scams are sleeping within the vendor's system, and they only come alive when they need to. And they will send an email coming from that vendor to you and maybe change the routing number that you're supposed to be paying in the future. And so you believe it because it came from exactly from that vendor, but it actually didn't come from that vendor. They were hacked and they don't know it. And so that's another time where you might want to call the vendor and say, hey, I just got this information that you're changing your routing numbers. Is this correct? Do I need to pay this, pay through this area now, or were you hacked? Because people have already lost millions of dollars through this simple scam. And then another just public service announcement that I always like to throw out whenever I talk about this subject is next time you're together with your entire family, leave all your phones and Alexa devices and all that in your house and walk as far away to the corner edge of your property as you possibly can and come up with a family passcode, password, passphrase, whatever you want to call it, and just memorize it in that moment. Never talk about it or text it ever again. But when you get a phone call from a family member that is in dire need of money for whatever reason, just ask them what's the family passcode. And if that person doesn't know it, it's going to sound just like your family member, by the way. You're going to really think it is your family member. In fact, it could even be a voice, a image call, and it's going to look like your family member too, but it is not your family member. The other way to do this is simply go to another phone and call that family member to see if in fact they are in trouble. So this is the level of sophistication, and I don't mean to scare you, but I just want you to know that this is how sophisticated these future scamming attempts are going to be happening. And some of these are actually happening right now. And another thing that is a downside to AI is bad data. So if your organization is working with bad data, you want to make sure that that you're improving your data capabilities as much as possible. Because frankly, bad data is going to hurt you more than it's going to help you. And what we mean by bad data is that, it's inconsistent, it's biased, or it's non-standardized. And all of that is, in other words, when you want AI to be helping you out the most, instead, it's going to be giving you unreliable or unusable information. So you want to make sure that your entire organization is practicing very good data hygiene habits, and let your employees and staff understand why this data capturing is so critically important and why it needs to be protected. And speaking of protecting your data, it's even more important, and something that might already have happened or be happening within your organizations, is you could potentially right now have employees that are playing around with these large language models and they are uploading sensitive information. And they may not realize it. They may think that large language model is protecting their information. But if they haven't done the research or set it up properly or working with the right partnerships, maybe that data is at risk. And these large language models, by the way, are very hungry for data from all different directions. So every time data is uploaded into a text prompt, they're going to be absorbing that information and that data. And so this has HIPAA implications and lots of other more serious implications around it as well. So first and foremost, make sure that you set a policy in place that your employees cannot be uploading sensitive data just randomly to these large language models. But the best defense in any of these scenarios is a strong offense. So one of the things that we recommend is conducting an AI assessment. And this is really going to look at your security, your sensitive information. How is that data being handled? What is your cybersecurity training up to date? And maybe the cyber hack is simply going after data in your case. It might not always be a financial hack. Also, what's the quality of your data? Where is it stored? How is it currently being used? And then looking at the vendors that you work with, how is that software being used and how is AI potentially being integrated into those software solutions and how protected is your data potentially in those environments? And then the opportunity analysis, we looked at all those use cases, but how can AI be best utilized within your organization at not just the individual level, but also the departmental level and the company-wide level. And it's all going to be designed around boosting your company goals and your productivity. And ideally, at the end of the day, in this type of assessment, you want to have sort of a matrix of options so that you're more, the options that are going to work best for your organization are sort of going to be listed in the upper right-hand quadrant. The ones that maybe are best suited for the type of data that you already have gathered that's already healthy. Maybe it's the solutions that are more timely for your needs that you have at this moment. And all of that can be, aligned as part of this assessment. And then you also want to have an AI governance model in place because as you continue to innovate as a result of AI, you always have to be balancing that out by managing the risks. So you want to make sure that those, your principles for fairness, transparency, accountability, all of that is outlined in this kind of model. You want to also create an oversight committee internally within your organization, ideally a multidisciplinary team. And this is going to be great to, really help kind of analyze every one of these projects and make sure that it's not biased, make sure you're getting, ensuring equitable treatment, that you're doing, you're regularly auditing the systems, that you're being transparent with your staff and all other, patients or clients, and that you're also continually improving this solution. And these solutions, by the way, AI is not a one and done exercise. Unfortunately, I wish it was. I wish it was like, yeah, we checked the AI box, we're all good to go. But because of the changes, those exponential changes that I talked about in the beginning of this presentation, these changes are going to be happening every month or every week. Frankly, they're happening right now. And so you always have to step back and look at, whatever governance model you have in place and make sure it's including the latest, greatest information. And then ultimately, this is all part of an AI roadmap. And you want that roadmap to have a top-down approach, starting with the senior executive level. And the reason I say that is because a lot of companies, they have some really ambitious employees at the, at the lower ranks that are already off and developing their own AI solutions. And that's all good and well, but it might not necessarily be aligning with the overall business goals, or it might be taking sort of some of the data and use cases off track, or maybe it's not really mitigating bias. So you've got to make sure that you have this kind of overarching approach to your roadmap. You want to make sure that you're selecting the right use cases, the ones that are going to give you the most value and have the clearest path to implementation. We always talk about, quality of data, but you also want to build over time a skilled team around you. You want cyber experts, data experts, and AI experts, along with people who are experts in features like Copilot. And the reason I say this is because you really have to look at AI from a very holistic perspective. And if you don't have cyber data and AI experts or people that understand the inner workings of Copilot, it's a good opportunity to bring in outside experts to help you understand those different areas and how to best manage that roadmap. And then as you find those use cases, you want to certainly start out with pilot projects. You don't want to just openly launch it to the outside world, but start with the pilot project, maybe within a small team. Scale the ones that are working most successfully and avoid creating lots of different projects and just winding up in pilot purgatory, because then nothing ever really sees the light of day. And with that said, I always like to end with the fact that we are all learning in this stage of AI. There are no true experts in this, only experts that have been around a long time and have seen enough of the AI growing. But there's so many new things happening every day. It's important to build your own expertise up at the same time. So, use free versions of these large language models. There's often other AI tools that give you free tokens or free trial timeframes. And then you can kind of play around with these tools and see which tools are best fitting your needs. Test and experiment with all the different types of prompts that are out there so that you can see which ones are mitigating bias or mitigating the hallucinations. And over time, you're going to see your own productivity and, increase. You're going to build your expertise around AI and also create the culture within your organization that it's not about learning something and holding on to it and not sharing it with other people, but you want to be able to create the culture that is sharing what you learn. So maybe holding a lunch and learns every so often so that staff can get together and talk about the way in which they're using these tools and which ones are working best for them. And that's going to really help elevate your organization over time overall. And with that said, we'll go ahead and open it up to some Q&A.
Wonderful. So first question we have for you, Anne, was I'm wondering how innovation patenting is going to be handled if it was generated by an AI tool. Do you have any insight into that?
I wonder the same thing. Yeah, this is definitely an area that I think a lot of the patent office is certainly going to have to evaluate. In fact, I think they've done some analysis, like you can't patent certain things in the the area of AI. There's also copyright issues with AI because AI was trained on the writings of other people, on the images of famous painters. So there's a lot of trademark, copyright, patent issues that are all going to be evolving probably in the near future.
Wonderful. Next question. I found an AI policy online. Is it okay to adapt that for my organization, or is there anything that I should be aware of?
I would not recommend that. You might use it just as a foundation piece, but really every organization has so many unique attributes to it. You want an AI policy that best fits the needs of your organization and even the structure of your organization. And most of the, AI policies, at least the ones I've seen that anybody might cut and paste online, or even the policies that might be generated by an AI, are so kind of broad or so non-specific that it's not really going to capture the unique aspects that you need that policy to capture within your organization. And also those policies, the way in which AI is moving so quickly, you're going to need to be constantly updating that policy as well.
Wonderful. The next one, my staff is getting really excited with all the new AI tools coming out. What's the best way to manage their excitement over the new trendy tool?
Yeah, and there's frankly dozens of new tools that get launched every day, and some of them are really slick and cool, and you get really excited about them. And I've been super excited by several of them myself. However, sometimes when you look back at the company that created that tool, it could potentially be just a guy out of his garage, which isn't, saying that that's necessarily a bad tool. But if you're putting a lot of your business information into a tool like that, or if you're working with a tool that's going to be a critical component of your organization, you want to make sure that business is going to be around for a while. And typically businesses that don't have much funding or could simply go under because that individual might have found a different idea that they want to go after. And so they're no longer supporting what they built before. So you want to really look at the health of the company behind that solution, and make sure that that solution is going to stand the test of time, at least for the near future, as you work through your solutions.
All right. The next one, as we begin to integrate AI into our environment, how do we best measure success of those initiatives and what KPI should we track?
Yeah, so this is an area where you could use AI to help you create the KPIs that you should be tracking. You certainly want to have, all the individuals within your company, sort of that committee of people sort of, coming up with sort of maybe the first generation of KPIs, but also, go ahead and, ask, any one of these AI solutions what the best KPIs are for every particular scenario that you might be measuring. And they might be giving you some more of those out of the box types of ideas and ways in which you can combine data at a future point to really see the success of a program. But always start out with baseline data. Even before you launch anything, you want to see, how much time it's taking something to maybe be initiated, or how much, whether it's time, cost, whatever it is you're measuring, you want to start out with that baseline and then reevaluate it, throughout the entire growth of that AI solution.
Great. Next one. Our organization is aware of that bad data is a problem. How is the best way to measure your data to see if it is reliable and go about improving data gathering processes if it needs to be improved?
So the thing about organizations looking at their own data and trying to assess the health of their own data, it's kind of like, you're so insular, and so, just seeing it every day, understanding it every day, you're not getting that outside perspective. So this is a time to really bring in some outside, experts in that space, have them analyze your data, have them give you a new perspective and a new way of looking at your data to truly determine if they believe it's healthy. And that's going to be based on their experiences working with, hundreds of other clients and analyzing their data, so that they have that kind of different perspective and different way of looking at it, to make sure that you're getting the answers that you need in order to build the solutions that you want.
Wonderful. The next one here, with new technology comes new responsibility. How do we add these AI tools without opening security risks? For example, Microsoft DAX Copilot stores transcripts on their servers for a certain time period. Are we liable for that risk as well?
Yeah, so that boils down to kind of reading the fine print and having people that are really knowledgeable in those areas with the solutions with those vendors, or even talking directly with those vendors to make sure that because a lot of your businesses are in highly regulated areas or have a lot of regulations around the data that you capture. And so it's critically important that you're not putting yourselves at risk. And that's why you have to make sure that those vendor relationships that you're and who you're working with understand that aspect of your business and understand that, where those risks lies. And that might even come down to find, language in a contract and working with that vendor as well.
Great. The next one here is, you've talked a lot about prompts and writing prompts. What makes the perfect prompt?
Yeah, so prompts are really getting more and more unique and interesting. I don't know if I mentioned this, but a lot of these solutions like ChatGPT have a GPT store where there's very highly sophisticated prompts within those GPTs that you can actually go and look at the prompt, or you can even have AI assist you in writing your own prompts. And what that does is it sort of gives you sort of a better crafted prompt, or you can look at a prompt that's been kind of expertly created and you can try to mimic it for your own use case. And experimenting with those prompts is also good too. But generally, you want to kind of not have your prompts be too long, because sometimes the AI will get lost in too much direction. So you want to sort of stage your prompts so that you're asking it, maybe you're uploading a document first. And then in your prompt, you might want to start your prompt off. Imagine you are the CEO of XYZ type of company, or a company in this industry sector. And then that allows the AI to immediately draw its, answers into that kind of industry sector, and only be capturing information from that industry sector in evolving its answer back. And so then you would want to ask your question after it. And of course, you're going to ask it to cite references as part of its answer. But you can also give it documentation ahead of time and say, I want your answer formatted and written in the style of the document that I've attached. And that way you can have it also write in the style that your organization may be accustomed to writing in, or in the format in which you need that information to be generated.
Perfect. All right. Looks like that is all the questions we have. So with that being said, thank you so much, Anne, for that insightful presentation. And thanks to all of you for attending today's webinar. We hope everyone found the session valuable and sparked some new ideas on how AI can be integrated into your organization.